What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Tavern Talks 2.0. I'm your host, Jay, and today we are going to be talking about the most romantic thing we can possibly fathom considering it's Valentine's Day, MegaCon Orlando 2025. In case you didn't get that, that is a joke. This is probably one of the least romantic places you can possibly go unless you and your significant other are interested in nerd culture. But I figured this was a good follow-up to our former Holiday Matsuri video. You'll see that tag pop up in the top right corner of your screen here in just a second. We had a great time talking with the voice of Iron. It's actually where we ended up meeting, and we dive a little bit into that and how that whole thing went. But without further ado, I guess we can get into this. So before we go any further, make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to Velvet Games, and ring that bell so you're notified when new content gets dropped. We really appreciate your support, and we're excited to deliver more of this content as time goes forward. So, MegaCon 2025. There are a lot of things to say about this because this was quite the experience. I ended up going with my sister. I should have some pictures run across the screen here. I took a handful of them just to kind of get the perspective of some of the things that we saw there, the general vibe of it, and really just try to get sort of that feel for the convention to see if you were there. I'm thinking about doing more of these as we go forward. I'm absolutely loving going to conventions, by the way, if this hasn't been clear. I am a baby con goer. I have gone to conventions in the past, but never regularly. And nowadays I feel like I've found some conventions that I'm really interested in. I've met some really cool people and community through them. My sister has made some friends getting their social media and things, so this is a good opportunity to be able to kind of reach out to the community, and hey, maybe at some point we'll even do a live panel from one of these conventions. I think that would be really cool, and if you guys want to see that, let me know down in the comments. We can definitely make that happen if that's something you guys are interested in seeing as well. So, the first thing I'm going to do is basically just kind of give an example as to how it stacks up against Holiday Matsuri, because it's really my litmus test as how I can compare against other conventions. I think it's kind of unfair to some extent to stack it against Holiday Matsuri in defense of anyone in the comments that says, no, you can't compare these two, they're not the same, because you're right, they're not. They're very different. For starters, Holiday Matsuri is exclusively anime, whereas MegaCon is really a all-encompassing convention. It's I would actually say more focused on pop culture, specifically with like Marvel, DC, comic books, just in general, and a lot of art. But of course, it also has a pretty strong focus on other pop culture things like Star Wars, TV shows, movies. To give you an example, like at least a partial cast of Twilight was there. They had Star Wars Skeleton Crew cast was there. The Avatar: The Last Airbender cast was there, and it was really cool to see them, even if I unfortunately did not get to go to their panel because as we walked up to it, it reached capacity, and we were very sad about that, but we'll save that for a later part in the video. Going back to it, how does it stack up against Holiday Matsuri? So the first thing to look at is the size of the convention. The size, it's not even comparable. With Holiday Matsuri, you're looking at maybe 20, 25, maybe 30,000 people. That's really the maximum that you're looking at there. With MegaCon, I think we were pushing, I haven't seen the official numbers yet, but I want to guess and make an estimation that we were well over 200,000 people, which sounds like a lot of people, and it absolutely was. But with the size of the venue, it actually worked out pretty well. Not saying that there weren't too many people there, because there absolutely were. More just with the size of the convention being as large as it was, and the size of the center, it kind of filled out nicely. It didn't feel like at any point were there just too many people in the convention center. Though Saturday was certainly getting there. So something to note is that it is not the same convention center. Well, I should say it is the same convention center, but not the same concourse, not the same building. Holiday Matsuri actually took place in the West Concourse, which is a totally separate building. One I actually, despite it being older and not quite the, I guess, grandiose concourse that the North-South Concourse building is, I actually liked the West building better than this one, and I have a couple reasons for that. First and foremost, the way that you can move around the convention, there was actually like a front, almost like a hallway that allows you to move to and from each area without going through the convention floor. That was not the case with this one. With the North-South Concourse, the only way to get from the north or into the South Concourse, which they had different events taking place at either side of it, was to walk through the main exhibitor floor. And this was a problem in a couple realms. The first thing is that it is absolutely gigantic. I don't know the actual size of it, but if I had to guess, I'm gonna say it's probably about a quarter mile to a half mile long. So you're really walking a good ways to get there. There's no other way to get there, and you are, my second point is, walking through the crowds. Those crowds can absolutely be devastating, especially if you're at the north end of the concourse and you don't realize, oh shoot, my panel's not at the north end, it's actually at the south end, and I have to be there in 15 minutes. And now you have to hike a half mile through crowds that are moving at a half mile an hour. So you're darting through people, you know, just weaving in and out, trying to pass around booths, and people who are walking slow, individuals who have large costumes or maybe even wheelchair or mobility assisting equipment that can really get cumbersome and take up a lot of space. And of course, the con goers that just decide to stop and chat in the middle of the walkway, as you know, anybody who's been to a convention can attest to, that there are a lot of those people. The other issue we ran into with having the North-South Concourse separated in the way that it was is there was actually an after-hours event on Saturday. It was called Anime After Dark, where they had a bunch of the English voice actors and cast of several different anime. And then for some reason, the guy who voiced King Boomy was also there, or at least supposed to be there. I didn't get a confirmation on that one. The problem was this took place after the exhibitor hours. And for anyone who's ever been to a convention, you know that when they close the convention center, you cannot go into the exhibitor hall. As the 30-minute mark approaches, they basically make a last call and say, everybody needs to leave, you know, finish your purchases and get out. And they'll close those doors and they'll lock them and you won't get back in for the rest of the evening. This was especially a problem considering if you wanted to go to this Anime After Dark, I believe that they actually split it into two sections where you had individuals in the South Concourse and individuals in the North Concourse. The problem was that in order to get from one to the other, you didn't have that option anymore. It was literally cut out because as soon as you left the building, there was no re-entry after that. I believe it was after 7 p.m. there was no re-entry to the building, which really stinks because if you wanted to go to the panel and hang out with the voice actors on one side, you could do that. Or if you wanted to go to the rave that was happening on the other side in the other concourse, you could go do that, but you couldn't do both. I may be speaking out of turn here, but this is just what I heard. This is the way I understand it. I felt like that probably could have been handled better, but in retrospect, we didn't even go to it. My sister and I were so exhausted. I had blisters on my feet after Friday night, and we'll get into why exactly, but we walked over 12 miles on Friday, which was our long day. Saturday ended up being the short one. But that is something to take into note. There was actually an extra day comparative to Holiday Matsuri. It was not just the regular 3 days, Friday through Sunday, like a lot of conventions are. This one actually started Thursday evening, and I was really not expecting that to play a big part in what we were doing and everything, but we ended up not only getting all of our stuff on Thursday, which took a few hours. I have to note, this is something that, it was not something that we were just in and out, you know, get our stuff and then go about your day. We literally spent about an hour and a half to 2 hours just trying to figure out where we're supposed to be getting our stuff, standing in lines, going around places. It was a long time there, but fortunately, as a pre-order 4-day pass holder, we actually got what they called a preview access, and we got some cool pictures that way, where the convention center really didn't have many people in it, and there were certain things we were able to take pictures of because we got there at 2 o'clock where the convention opens officially at 4. So we spent that 2 hours-ish in that time just getting our stuff, moving around, figuring out where things are, and kind of understanding how the convention works. In that regard, it was really cool. And for anybody who wants to go to MegaCon, I highly recommend you order your tickets ahead of time and have them shipped straight to you. Unlike Holiday Matsuri, we got our tickets on time. Actually, we got them early. I got my ticket physically in my hand before I even got the notification that it was being shipped. So to put that into perspective, they did a really good job with that, and I have to give MegaCon kudos to prompt shipping, especially with as many people as pre-ordered. We were probably in the 10 to 12% of people who went to the convention. So I would say at least about 5 to 10,000 of us that probably ended up getting those passes ahead of time, because that was the emptiest we saw the convention the entire weekend, Sunday included. With that said, the extra day was a bit more than we were probably ready for. 4 days on your feet is a lot of time, especially when, and this is my next point, the after hours events were absolutely phenomenal. I didn't get a good opportunity to go to any of the after hours events for Holiday Matsuri, save for one panel that I think ran until 9 p.m. or something around that time. We were honestly so tired, and with this convention, we ended up staying out in the DoubleTree for a couple nights. It's the SeaWorld DoubleTree by Hilton. I forget exactly the name of it, but it's the one right next to SeaWorld. I'm not going to dive too much into that one, mainly because this is a review of MegaCon and not hotels nearby. But we ended up staying there and shuttling back and forth, and that enabled us to go to some of these later events, whereas normally we'd be driving about 45 minutes to an hour with traffic and everything, you know, from the house to the convention, all of that, and pay for parking on top of it. So this worked out well. But in particular, one after hour event that we did go to and had an absolutely amazing time was Universal. This was by far the highlight of the entire convention. And that's saying a lot because I am a Has-Been Hotel fan. I enjoyed the show a lot. I was part of the fandom back before it came out, so not to say that I'm I'm not one of those people, I should say. I enjoy the fandom. I don't get too deep into it or anything. But I used to watch like the Honeycast and stuff with Ashley and Michael Kovac and Ed Bosco and all those guys. It was a lot of fun. I really dove into the lore a bit back in the day. But with that said, I got to go to the Has-Been Hotel panel, which was the 3 voice actors for Charlie Morningstar, Angel Dust, and Alistair, respectively. I would mention their names, but I'm just going to pop up a picture there. You're going to see these guys. They were a lot of fun. Honestly, I haven't been to one of their panels before. It was a lot of fun, but I'm getting off track. That was a lot of fun. Went late Thursday night for that, and then Friday night we went to Universal. We walked, I think at Universal, another 5 or 6 miles on top of what we had walked during the day. Friday from about, I think we got there about 11 a.m. Yeah, I think it was about 11 a.m. all the way until 5, at which point we went back to the hotel, got our stuff together, and then went to Universal at 6-ish. Traffic was horrendous, won't mention that. But going into it, the fact that they actually had mix-in at Universal from 5 until 7, we got there basically at 7. We were like pulling up to the gates right about there. Went straight in. You had to have a wristband, you got your tickets, and you got a $25 gift card per person. And you get all of this access from 5 p.m. to midnight for $100. That is less money than the average Universal ticket, and the crowds were significantly lighter. Granted, you didn't get access to everything. There were definitely some rides that were not accessible specifically in the Universal Studio side, but the Islands of Adventure side was completely open. You could ride whatever you wanted as much as you want. Most of the rides were just walk-on, with the exception of, I believe it was Hagrid's coaster? I forget the exact name of it, but Hagrid's ride in the Wizarding World section, which was, I've never actually ridden that one. It looked cool, but it was an hour wait, and we're thinking, we've only got so much time, does it make sense to spend an hour in line to go on one ride? We ended up skipping that, but we went on basically everything else. It was an absolute blast. One of my favorite parts had to be the fact that they opened, I believe it was the Jurassic Zone or Camp Jurassic, It's the kids section in the Jurassic Park area. I have not been on that since I was very small. And the fact that there was nobody there, there wasn't a child in sight. My sister and I went there, we climbed the ropes and stuff, went down the slides, we scared the bejesus out of a security guard who wasn't expecting us to be there and demanded to see our wristbands, which we promptly gave him. It was a very unique experience, to say the least. We had an absolute blast, just being able to sort of relive, memories from our childhood and go do things that we haven't done in a really, really long time. It's been like 5 years since we've been to Universal because it's been so expensive. But all that considered, that was absolutely something worth doing. If you go to MegaCon in the future, and I understand they did this last year and they plan on doing it again in the future. If you go to MegaCon 2026, I strongly recommend going to Universal after hours. If you are a fan of theme parks, you like Universal, or you just want to walk around and see it if you've never been, and you're willing to stay up till midnight and put in the extra walking, do it. It is so worth it. I have not been to an after hours event like that before, at least not to that extent, and the fact that it was less money, less crowded, and every attraction was open, and they give you a $25 gift card, which can be used for food. You can buy virtually anything in the park with that. It's basically cash value. You're basically spending $75 on a ticket and $25 for food. That is absolutely worth it. 100% do it. Going back to how it stacks up against Holiday Matsuri, MegaCon definitely stepped it up with security. One of the things I mentioned at Holiday Matsuri is that there were no bag checks, there were no security. People could have theoretically walked around and done stuff without a badge. Everything was well maintained at MegaCon. Like, you could not enter the building, you could not go down the escalator, you could not go to any panel without A, making sure that you have gone through security checkpoint, and B, having your badge scanned. Except the escalators, they really just wanted to see your badge, but having your badge scanned, that was such a cool feature. The fact that there was an RFID chip inside the badge and they were able to track who was going to what panels. I think they're using that not just for, like figuring out who's going to what so they can kind of balance the panels and whatnot, but also for numbers retention, to understand how many people are, in certain areas at certain times. I think that's how it's being used anyway. I hope so. And if that's the case, it'll alleviate one of the concerns I have. We'll talk about that later in this video. So let's talk about what MegaCon did well. I'm going to be honest, there were only a few things in here that I think they really hit the nail on the head with, and I'll be quick about it. Generally, the panels began on time, with the exception of a couple of them. Specifically, I went to Talks with Todoroki. It was David Matranga. Really, really cool guy. Got an opportunity to see that and kind of get to see who he is as a person and enjoy him reacting to fans. There was a mix-up in the schedule. His panel was supposed to start, I believe, at 12 o'clock, but they pushed it back because another panel got moved. He ended up having to go at 2:30 p.m. On Sunday. So it was the very last panel we went to, and they could not locate him. So we were sitting in a room waiting 20 minutes. That is not MegaCon's fault. It was more so just an unfortunate circumstance led to some confusion. David was very understanding and sympathetic, even when they were saying, like, we need to go lightning questions and make it fast. He's like, well, let's push the envelope. Let's give people an opportunity to speak. I think that was really cool. I appreciate that. I doubt you're listening, but David Matranga, if you're listening, you're really cool. Thank you so much for that. And I appreciate you being that kind of voice actor as opposed to someone who's just sort of in their own little world, but that you actually care about the fans. I appreciate that. What else did MegaCon do well? I would say good diversity of interests. Whereas Holiday Matsuri is exclusively anime, and the only breakdown you're gonna have for that is really just, do you like shonen? Do you like, maybe romance anime? Do you like sports anime? Like, it sort of breaks it down into those categories, but it's still anime focused with maybe a little bit in video games. MegaCon touched everything. We're talking comic books, superheroes, TV shows, movies. Like they had the cast of the House of the Dragon there, or at least a few of them. They had Star Wars stuff. They had, of course, your anime things. I mean, the number of nerdy panels and types of panels was just absolutely phenomenal. They had Danny Glover and Mel Gibson there, so the cast of, or the main cast, I should say, of Lethal Weapon. I mean, they're going back. They had I think the Breakfast Club was there. They had the cast of Full House. No, excuse me, Happy Days. The fact that they were able to reach and touch all these different interests, I think is really, really indicative of a con that is trying to be everything. And to that extent, you can find something you like there, 100%. I don't think like if you enjoy any one of those bits of media, you're going to enjoy something at MegaCon. Maybe not all of it, but at least something. Even just people who like art, or maybe that you like Has-Been Hotel or Hell of a Boss. If you enjoy these different forms of media, you enjoy these different shows and things, you're gonna find something there, because Artist Alley was huge and a lot of fun. The other thing that was really cool, we didn't get an opportunity to take advantage of it, mostly because getting around iDrive right now, with all the construction and everything they're doing, is just not fun. We didn't go out to any of the restaurants. Literally the only places we ate was the convention and Universal. That was it. It was a mistake. We spent way too much money on food, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But overall, that would have been cool if we had more money to spend. A lot of places were offering these discounts because you were a MegaCon attendee. They were trying to attract more business, so that was pretty neat. And finally, as I sort of dipped into a little bit, there were a lot of celebrities there. The fact that they had all these different, people and shows that were represented, I think was really, really, really cool. Holiday Matsuri only had, I want to say maybe 25 or so celebrities in total, and that included the cosplayers and things. I think we were well over 100 celebrities with MegaCon. The whole list for 2025 is still available. If you go to their website, you can take a look at all these names, and you'll probably find somebody you recognize. The only two that I was very disappointed was Millie Bobby Brown and Vivienne Medrano were not there. So for those who are not familiar, Millie Bobby Brown is 11 from Stranger Things. And then Vivienne, I believe it's Vivienne, is Vivzy Pop, the creator of Has-Been Hotel and Hell of a Boss. Both of them canceled basically last minute, which is really unfortunate because they both had panels that were relatively interesting and I was looking forward to. Didn't get to see either of them. Rather, Viv was supposed to join in the Hell of a Boss, Has-Been Hotel panel, and didn't end up getting to do that. And you could definitely see traces of it where she was a last minute addition, but a last minute dropout. And some of the questions that were prepared to be asked during that panel ended up getting basically breezed over. I think the commentator at one point actually said, "Oh shoot, that one's for Viv. I'm sorry about that. We'll move on to a different one." So you can tell that they were sort of scrambling. Again, not MegaCon's fault, per se. It's just unfortunate. So now let's talk about what fell flat at MegaCon, because there were definitely some things that I would have changed, or at least it's important to kind of understand what did not go well. For the first thing I want to talk about is basically just how disorganized and decentralized it is. To some extent, decentralization is a good thing at a convention like this. If you're attempting to keep everything so tightly centralized that it's basically just one person asking questions or answering questions that are being asked, I should say, it's going to be too chaotic. You're going to get overwhelmed. When you have, let's say, 10% of the people, that's 20,000 people asking questions. If you have just one person answering them, it's too much. People are going to get frustrated. It's not going to work. So you have to decentralize to some extent. What was a bit frustrating is when there were certain things that should have been common knowledge and the people who were being asked these questions did not know. They would radio around, which was kind of cool, but even then, like, specific answers were not given. So one issue we ran into was Since we got our passes in early, they did not come with the lanyard that I ordered, and it did not come with the Universal tickets that were ordered. You had to go pick those up at the convention center. Just like, okay, that's not that big a deal. Once you're in, you don't have to follow these big lines with the crowds and everything, and we get a couple extra hours to get stuff sorted out. And it ended up working out, but it was still frustrating. We could not figure out where to get this stuff, and there was conflicting information as to, oh no, you're supposed to go upstairs for this. No, you go over to this room. Okay, over here is where they have all this stuff. It ended up being the entryway, the main entry, which was neither the north or south concourse. It was literally, the north or south entrance, I should say. I guess it's all just one big north-south concourse, but it was neither the north or south entrance, which is, we came in from the north entrance where all the buses were dropping people off. You had to go to the side, I guess you could call it the east entrance, which was basically just a big garage door that was opened. And then they had this sort of like sectioned off room with a bunch of ropes and curtains and things that were used for traffic control to funnel basically the masses, people who picked up their pass the same day, people who were buying a pass on that same day, and then just, any other people who needed to come by to get stuff. It was funneling those thousands of people in through that area. Well, we get into that area on the other side, basically consider it the inside of the entrance. So like we're already past security, we're like past the area where people had their tickets scanned, and there's this tiny little line that's unclear that says like merch pickup. We end up figuring it out. Oh, that's where we're supposed to get the lanyards. No big deal. After running around asking people, because there's no signage that you can see until you're basically on top of it that even says where we're supposed to go. And at one point, we even asked a security guard who technically was just working security to make sure that people were going where they're supposed to. And I asked him where we're supposed to get the lanyards, and he says we had to leave and come back in. And I'm like, I'm not going to believe him on that ground. We're going to figure it out because everyone else is telling us we can get it on the inside and we don't have to go through those lines. Ended up getting a lanyard, no problem. When it came to the Universal tickets, we did actually have to leave the convention. We had to go out, scan our badges to leave, go back through security, then go get in line, which was like right next to will call for everybody else. I don't know why they felt that was a good idea. I don't know why they thought that was okay. Why they didn't have like a section for, because they had a ticket help and a will call on the inside of the convention. So once you were like scanned in and everything, you could then go to this will call counter and get whatever you needed help with taking care of. For some reason, they felt the need to put it in a separate section. I'm frustrated with it. I think it could have been handled better, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. I ended up putting out a post on the Discord to basically say, hey, everybody, this is how you get your Universal tickets. If you're going to Universal, make sure you don't, spend all this extra time, walking around here, because it's really just a waste of time. Nobody knows where they're going, what they're supposed to do. And this is just the easiest way you can get out of that. So with that in mind, I think it's also important to talk about the fact that the Discord, while being really, really cool, is technically an unofficial Discord. Now, this works to the benefit to some extent. With talking about the decentralization is fine, because I understand there's way more people that need help than MegaCon can offer. Understandable. To that same extent, there was a lot of confusion, especially when it came to the hotel shuttle and transportation schedule. There was talks about there not actually being shuttles to and from the hotels. Why that was the case, I don't know. It was very frustrating, specifically because we were going to be relying on those shuttles to get to and from the con, not to and from Universal necessarily, but because we weren't directly on site. It was about a 1.5 mile drive from our hotel to where we were supposed to be dropped off. Granted, we probably could have walked it. Didn't really want to, because adding another 3 miles effectively in just to get to and from the hotel every single day, absolutely miserable, especially because it was in the 80s the entire week. Very, very warm, and my sister, who does a lot of cosplay, was just boggled down and all that stuff. There would have been makeup melting, a lot of sweat and frizzy hair, like just a bad time for everybody because the humidity was high, the heat was high, not a fun time. They didn't tell us about this schedule officially and release anything until the moderator of the Discord, or not just the moderator, I think he's the owner of the Discord server, reached out via email and said, can you confirm this is happening? Other people were doing the same thing to a different email, but also still at Fan Expo MegaCon, and getting different answers. Some of them said, there are no shuttles. Others said, there are shuttles and they're being run by the hotels. I still don't know who was running those shuttles. And that was really the most frustrating part of it. It seemed to me as though maybe the hotels were running their own shuttles, considering the shuttle that we were on that went to the DoubleTree also went to another Hilton brand hotel. It was True by Hilton, which is, it seemed to me more of like a Best Western or La Quinta Inn style, just like, you know, very basic, generic looking hotel in comparison to some of the other stuff that's out there. But for some reason, it was more expensive than even the DoubleTree, which is confusing to say the least, but I digress. But with all that in, you know, considering whatnot, that was probably the most frustrating part of the experience, is not knowing whether or not we're going to be on the hook for our own transportation. I'm glad that wasn't the case. So another thing we ran into that was a constant problem was the fact that a lot of these rooms were much too small for what kind of crowds they were drawing. I think a big part of it was just that they widely underestimated how large these crowds were going to be. I think that the scanning of the badges was to kind of give an idea of how big they're supposed to be for the future. But to be honest, MegaCon is not a new convention. It's been around for a long time and it's got a lot of weight with its name. You know, when you say MegaCon, it's easily the largest in the region. A lot larger than any other convention I'm aware of, except for maybe Dragon Con, and that's in Atlanta. So to kind of put stuff into perspective, like they should have a kind of an inkling of an idea of how large these rooms need to be based on the panels that they're putting on, especially with their popularity. The only one that I felt was an appropriate size room for the panel, with the smaller rooms anyways, was one of the 4 we went to. Don't want to throw too much shade on this one, but Why We Love Jar Jar Binks. I don't know why. They seem like nice people, but the lady who was putting it on literally started it with saying, I'm not too familiar with who Jar Jar Binks is. It's my friend who likes Jar Jar Binks, and she's down there, but I'm the ambassador, so I do this. I don't know why they did it that way. It would have been much better to have someone who had the passion driving that panel, especially because it was hard to even call it a panel. In a lot of cases, they had basically there was, like they put up a picture of Jar Jar Binks with his information, asked a few questions, gave away some prizes. They had a Jar Jar Binks impersonation section, and there was like a 9 or 10-year-old kid who competed against a bunch of grown men. And of course the crowd chose the kid because we're not sociopaths. But then the judges chose some other dude for their prize, and it's like, it's getting weird. They lost us when they decided maybe a quarter of the way or a third of the way through the panel to put on a music video that had absolutely nothing to do with Jar Jar Binks. And they wanted us to dance. I didn't know the song. I don't really dance. And it was a little strange, to say the least. I don't know what they were thinking with that one, so maybe some vetting for these panels would be suggested before putting them on, because it was not a good panel. In fact, I, without being too mean, could say that it was one of the least favorite I've ever been to. Well, with that aside, just to say the rooms were generally too small. So one of the other things we ran into was nonsensical crowd control. And this one was not encountered a lot, but in some cases, first of all, like the escalators they were using to go up and down from the concourses often stopped. There's a video I saw on TikTok that basically said, you know, the MegaCon experience, and it's the 2 escalators that are meant to go up were both stopped, and they had people climbing them like stairs. Honestly, I can confirm that is pretty accurate. In fact, one of the escalators we were riding stopped while we were going down. Now, fortunately, it's going down an escalator, not up one. But even so, still not a fun experience, because what do you do in that situation? you treat them like stairs. That's pretty much all you can do. At least it wasn't an elevator, thank God. But the nonsensical crowd control, primarily the only issue I ran into was we basically took a shortcut, so to speak. We came out from a panel on the South Concourse and went down the escalators and everything in a second section that basically dumped you straight into the entry zone, that big room I was talking about before. And there were 2 entrances to the actual convention floor available there. There was one on the far left up against the wall and one on the other side of the room that was deeper into the convention. It basically dropped you about a third of the way, almost halfway into the convention floor. Well, we were going to get food. The food court was just on the other side of that. And we figured, why cut through these crowds when we can just go that direction, cut in really quick, and then we're basically at the food court. Saves us a bunch of time. And one of the staff decided to yell at us and say, you can't go that way, everyone has to go this way. Even though both of them are marked as welcome to MegaCon and they're both entrances, she felt the need to say, no, you can't go that way. I get it. She's probably just trying to do crowd control, but that was excessive and really, I think, very silly to say that. It wasn't even like there was a big group of us or anything. It was 2 of us. You've got 900 people walking one direction and 2 walking the other direction, and we're the ones she decided to pick on. I don't get it. I think it was dumb. And I basically said next time that happens, we're just going to ignore her. But with that in mind, that was pretty much the worst of the crowd control. Another issue we ran into was not enough places to sit. Now, at most conventions, you're going to assume you're going to be doing a lot of walking. It is safe to assume you're going to be walking 10 to 20 times more than the average office worker does at any given time in their life. With that said, there really wasn't anywhere to sit beyond the food court in the actual main hall. If you wanted to sit down, you were either up against a wall or you were in the main entrance sides, I guess, for either the north or south entrance. And even then, seating was basically non-existent. Most of the people sitting down were sitting on these like concrete bench slab things. I don't even know if they were meant to be seats per se. They were sitting on the floor and they were sitting on stairs. I don't think I saw a single bench the entire time I was there. So for anybody, especially who has, walking issues or any kind of disability where you need to sit down a lot, it's probably not going to be the convention for you. It's not really MegaCon's fault, although they probably could have deployed some kind of seating potentially. I don't really know how that would work. I don't know what the Orange County Convention Center would allow, but in theory, it could be done. And now, let's look at some of the things that you probably want to prepare for that wasn't necessarily MegaCon's fault, but just kind of be ready for if you're interested in going to this. Lightning Edition. So the first thing is that the size of the exhibitor hall is massive with nowhere to rest, as I talked about. So make sure that if you're going into the exhibitor floor, you're probably going to be walking for about an hour to an hour and a half. And if you aren't intending on eating, you're probably not going to find a good place to sit. So bring some comfortable shoes, make sure you're ready to walk. Speaking of food, it was very expensive. So if you're looking to buy food at the convention center, either budget for $15 to $16 per person for an a la carte whatever. Like, to give you an example, they had Four Rivers there, which granted was pretty good, but it was $15 just for a sandwich. That's a lot of money. That didn't come with a drink, didn't come with chips, it's just a sandwich. And similarly, I got a Boar's Head Turkey Club for $16, and it was literally a sandwich and a bag of chips with a pickle. Granted, it wasn't terrible, but it certainly wasn't restaurant quality. I probably could have gotten the same amount of food from Publix for a third of that, and it probably would have been just as good, if not better. They also use Boar's Head, so not really an excuse for that there, other than the convenience. Speaking of food and beverages, water at the convention did not taste fresh. The convention's filtration system was probably not up to snuff, or it was very old or overutilized, but it tasted like tap water. If you're used to that, good for you. I'm not. I prefer something that has actually been filtered, like a Brita filter, or, bottled water isn't exactly the greatest to taste or, greatest for you, but it was a lot better than that. And, I live in a town that has absolutely horrendous water because it's Florida and we have a bunch of minerals leach into our water and make it taste like dirt. So to say their convention water was not good is really saying something. Speaking of that, the only places to refill if you were looking to keep water was basically at the north or south entrance. They had water fountains, and occasionally, usually on the bottom floor, or excuse me, the entry floor, I should say, because it's technically the second floor, they will have a refill station where, again, you just kind of put your water up to it and press it. It's all connected to the water fountain system. Maybe that's why it tasted like that. Whatever the case is, it wasn't the freshest. Just gonna say. Of course, along with a lot of people comes a lot of traffic. No surprise, because it's iDrive and Universal Boulevard and everything else that comes with that. Very, very, very congested. Something to keep in mind is that the first bus that we went to, when we went on Thursday, we just parked at one of the convention's official lots. They run shuttles to and from that area at no charge to you. The bus was 20 minutes late, and on top of that, when it finally got there, it was extremely small, overpacked, and had no air conditioning. It was 85 degrees that day. It was probably 95 in that bus. No airflow, no breeze, extremely stuffy, and then caught in traffic for an additional 20 minutes. I felt like I was dying. I live here. I'm used to sitting in a hot car with no AC. That was rough. It was not a fun situation. So if you have a medical condition and you're looking to use the convention shuttles, I don't recommend it. Not to say that the convention didn't have good shuttles, because the bus we caught back was probably 30 years newer than the bus that picked us up initially, but it's not necessarily the most reliable. If you're looking for a half-decent bus that is going to be able to accommodate someone with physical disability needs, maybe look at staying at one of the hotels and taking one of their shuttles. And then finally, for my list of complaints, so to speak, is that the only coffee cart, being a Starbucks, at this entire convention that I identified was closed on Thursday, and it didn't open until Friday, which normally you'd think, okay, whatever, it's not that big a deal, it's a 4-day convention, you can deal with it. But we were there until 9:30 on Thursday. It was late. 7 p.m., I was already tired. I could have used some caffeine, and they weren't delivering. Like an espresso cart or something would have been nice, but Starbucks not even being open, a bit frustrating. So maybe bring some caffeine pills, or if you like energy drinks, bring one of those with you. We were never denied entry for any kind of liquid. I think they were more looking to see that you didn't have some kind of booze or drugs or weapons on you when you went through the security checkpoints. So slipping a Monster or a Red Bull into your bag is probably not going to be the end of the world, though it probably will be a bit warm by the time you're ready to drink it. So just keep that in mind. And now finally, my verdict on this. To sum things up, we only got to go to 4 panels the whole convention. That was partly from our own lack of planning. My sister has an issue with going out with anything less than exactly the right amount of makeup. She takes a long time doing that to get ready, and that often led to us missing hours of the convention. She will eventually learn that it is pertinent to sacrifice sleep for cosplay as opposed to convention time, because sleep is free and the con isn't. But that aside, we only got to go to 4 panels. One of them was absolutely not good. The other 3 were pretty decent. One of them being a lot of fun with Hasman Hotel, and probably the most fun I've had with any of the panels. It was very crowded there, so not good for people with fear of crowds. At any given time, you could probably see between 5,000 to 10,000 people in your peripheral, and that's just Friday. That wasn't even Saturday. Saturday, there was literally hundreds of thousands of people there. It was absolutely insane. So if you have a problem with crowds and you want that quiet time and whatnot, this convention was a little bit more cumbersome to get around. Holiday Matsuri was definitely better for people with issues with crowds. I think MegaCon really just gets away with being really big and inclusive for different interests and hobbies, mainly because there wasn't anything that stuck out to me as the theme of the convention, even though this year I heard I think the theme was DC and comics, I guess. I mean, I kind of figured that was just sort of the vibe of it, but maybe that was the theming. I don't really know. Whatever the case was, it's fine. It was nothing special or particularly super interesting, but definitely something worth going to if you really enjoy those. Still a good time though. Honestly, Universal was the biggest win to me on that whole front. If you like Universal or theme parks and you just want to go for that, you don't actually have to go the 4 days to get access to the Universal bit. You just literally have to buy any one of the days. You could theoretically go Thursday, spend the evening there, get your Universal tickets, then go home, go to work on Friday, and go to Universal on Friday night and not go to the rest of the convention if you want to do that. You can totally do that if that's the case. You just have to pick them up before the event. But moreover, definitely go if you like what you hear and you can spare the money. It was a good time. If I had to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably give it a 6 or a 7. It was good, not as good as it absolutely could have been. One of the things we're looking at doing, one of the people I should say that my sister ended up meeting because of her Tokyo Revengers fandom were a couple of ladies that go down to MegaCon in Tampa. I hadn't even heard of MegaCon, to be completely honest. But after hearing more about it, it sounds like exactly the type of convention I like going to. So we're hoping to go to MegaCon, and if you'd like to meet us there, you are welcome to do that. Just drop a comment down below, and hopefully we'll see you there. But all in all, it was a good time. I love conventions. I absolutely think it's a great time, and I'm really just looking forward to getting to try out more of them and really test the waters. But what do you think? What's your favorite convention to go to? Drop a comment down below and let me know. I'd love to check them out. Maybe we'll even visit some of these. But once again, I want to thank you guys all so much if you've gotten this far. This is a lot longer than I thought it was going to be, but I've had a good time talking about this, getting it off my chest, and I hope you guys have had a good time listening to it. So make sure you guys like the video, subscribe again to Velvet Games, and ring that bell. Drop a comment down below if you want to see more of this stuff, and I'm happy to make it happen. But again, I appreciate your support so much. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, stay awesome.